أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على أشهد أن عليا حجة الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله إن الله والملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى والذي خلق السماوات والأرض بغير عمد ترونها تبارك وتعالى هو الأول والآخر وإليه المنتهى نحمده ونستعينه ونثني عليه ونؤمن به ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف بريته ومبلغ رسالاته العبد المؤيد الرسول المسدد المحمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآله اللهم صل وسلم على علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين اللهم صل وسلم على أهل بيت النبوة عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Brothers and sisters, I remind all of you and myself to continue the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My congratulations to everybody on this auspicious occasion, the wiladat of the highest of all messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course it makes sense to speak a little bit about the Holy Prophet on this occasion. Now, when you want to introduce the Prophet to people, what are you going to do? Are you going to go around and tell them about how sophisticated this Prophet of ours was, how much philosophy he knew, how his message, how deep his message was, which his message was deep. The Prophet of Allah was a sophisticated individual. He had access to all of the knowledge that anyone can have access to. So when you're going to go out to introduce the Holy Prophet to the people, how are you going to do it? Well, when we look at the stories about the Prophet, when we look at the Quran and how the Quran speaks of the Prophet, you find that it's not very sophisticated actually. You find that it's very simple things, which shows us that, and if this is the last Prophet of Allah, which means that there's going to be no Prophet after him, then this shows that humanity has reached the point in its growth that it doesn't need a Prophet necessarily after that with a new message. This message is going to be the message. Of course, you will have guides that will need to be coming after him, as at least according to the Shi'i school of thought, where they will explain this message, but it's not that the message is going to change anymore. And when I say the message, I mean in its entirety. It's not like Prophet Nuh came, Prophet Isa came with a message, and then the Holy Prophet comes with a whole different message. No. It's a gradual growth you can see. But what you would expect is that, okay, so now this is the final Prophet, so there's something very sophisticated about this message. Well, I want to share with you 4 or 5 stories of how the Prophet is introduced to us. And then we'll see that, oh, as a matter of fact, it's very simple. As a matter of fact, it might even seem that the Prophet came just to remind us of some things that Allah had already embedded in us. Okay? Islam is not that hard of a religion. Yes, there will be rulings that will get complicated sometimes, but that's because life has become so complicated. And so carrying out those rules sometimes will have their details. But the message in its entirety, when you look at these stories, you find that, okay, the Prophet is just reminding against, after the Tawheed, he's reminding the people that, look, you have some things in you, I'm just going to remind you of those. These are not complicated things. And it's what's even more interesting is this, that the Prophet, because he was a manifestation of these normal human qualities, but he was a manifestation of them. He was a practical example of them. That's why the people would fall in love with him. Because it's easy to preach, but it's not as easy to practice that which you preach, okay? So we have to keep this in mind. This is very inspirational for those of us who have any form of tabligh in our daily routine, any form of preaching to people in our daily routine. Enough for those of us who have anything to do with Islamic tarbiyah of people, the masses, even if it comes to our own family. I remember asking one of these great ulama akhlaq once, or someone else asked and I was there, how do we make these kids of ours, how do we make them become proper practicing Muslims? His answer was a very simple one, and everyone knows this answer. But if you think about it, there's reality and truth to it. He said, when the child sees you being a proper Muslim at home with each other, when he sees how you are praying all the time, and they see that, they will follow suit most probably. Now, once again, that's not going to be the formula for success. It doesn't guarantee everything. But what you can be sure about is when you're not practicing, it's probably not going to pass on. So it is at least one of the necessary elements in tarbiyah of somebody. And so the people, when they look at the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he's saying the same things that they knew. He will say the golden rule, for example. Well, the Christians have been saying that forever as well, that Jesus said the golden rule. No, but when you have a person who is an example of that saying it, it sits within the heart, okay? As was with previous prophets. So now, I just want to share with you 4 or 5 of these stories, just to warm us up for what I want to say in our second khutbah about the Holy Prophet. So it says here that one day the Holy Prophet ﷺ was sitting with his companions, and they see a strong youth from early morning is working, getting stuff done and stuff. And so apparently the Prophet praises that youth. But then these people who are around the Prophet, they say that, was it really that praiseworthy what this youth is doing? Couldn't he be doing something in the way of Allah instead? So you see, this misunderstanding that doing things in the way of Allah has to do with worship and dhikr only. You know what the answer the Prophet is going to give is. What does he say? He says, don't say this. This youth, this youth is working so that he can fulfill the needs of himself and others. And this person has taken steps in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times have we talked about this up here? Yes, do not underestimate and undervalue that job that you have. Now, no one's saying that everything's perfect. No, we know what the corporate world is. and how, they are milking the people of whatever they're worth. So I'm not necessarily saying that that is the way of life, but what we are saying is that at least this work can be seen as something that is praiseworthy in the eyes of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. So if he's doing that for himself, or others, or doing this for his mother and father that might have disabilities now, they can't work for themselves, or for his young children, and what he does through all of this is makes them needless of the people, then this person has taken steps in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you think about it, you're like, okay, thank God. Thank God that we have such an easygoing religion and such a simple way of doing ibadah that Islam has brought us. Think about it. If the only way to worship Allah was to go in the mountains, what if this religion had actually come and said, you have to go in the mountains? Look at my Prophet, look at him go in the mountains. But no, the Prophet, just like everyone else, is picking up that shovel and working hard every day. The Imams, we've heard the stories, to the point where the Sufis of their time would probably call them out and they say, why are you working for the dunya? It's just beautiful. I don't know. This is something to look into, actually. I haven't. Do we have in other faiths and creeds, do we have this idea of worship of God equaling the normal dunyawi work that you do? I'm not sure if we can find something like that necessarily. What you actually find, for example, these are things that we have studied in the past. You look into, for example, some branches or forms of Christian mysticism. The material world is evil in and of itself, is bad in and of itself. Okay? If it's bad in and of itself, then why is Islam pushing us to be part of this whole thing? Okay? No, if it was bad in and of itself, our prophets would have gone in the mountains and taught the people to move to the mountains as well. Okay, so that's one story by the Holy Prophet. Doesn't seem too sophisticated and complicated, right? In other words, live your lives, people, and get Jannah in return. Just live them within certain confines and boundaries. Another story here that we have is that it says the Holy Prophet was approached by a man, and this person took the saddle of the Holy Prophet, like holding on to make sure that he can get his answer from the Prophet. Don't worry, the Prophet's not going to go anywhere. And he says, teach me something that will get me to Jannah. Okay? Teach me something that will get me to Jannah, guarantees me Jannah. So now here, Jannah is eternity, Jannah is infinity. And so you would think, just like, if someone sees a millionaire or a billionaire, teach me. The guy's going to be like, listen, I can't say anything to you in 1 minute that will get you to become a billionaire. You have to see how I did it. Let's sit down, we talk for hours, at least. All right? The Holy Prophet, though, when he is telling this person how to become a ukhrawi billionaire, let's call it, he says the golden rule. He says, be like with the people the way you would want them to be towards you. Finished. You tell me, why should a person not be interested in the message of this person? Think about it. He is promising you eternity and infinity. What's he asking you for? Is it something that rocket science has to figure out? Something super complicated and sophisticated? No. But here I am complaining about this very religion sometimes. It's asking too much of me. No. First of all, brothers and sisters, let us lock in on the prize, okay? People think religious people are not after pleasure. Religious people are after the most pleasure, actually. We are the most pleasure-seeking people. Imam Ali is one of the most pleasure-seeking people. He says it in Nahjul Balagha. He says, I want the pleasure that never ends. That's why I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket here. Okay, we have to understand this. Look at the prize. Stay locked in on the prize, and I'll talk about this in the second khutbah a little bit as well. Stay locked in on the prize, then everything else that you have to do is going to be worth it. I swear, it's like you just watch, it's all over YouTube and in social media now. People posting their before and afters and telling you that it was just worth it because look at what I have now. Worth it. It's worth the struggle. The thing is, man and mankind is in such a rush to get to that prize. That is what determines and defines whether it's worth it or not. How much time it takes to get there. Yes, reaching akhirah is going to take the most time than anything else. Why? Because it's your whole lifetime. I can be the way I should be throughout my life. The last 5 years of my life I mess up, then everything's probably going to be gone. Yeah? So it is tough, but keep yourself locked in on the prize. Very simple stuff here. He's not asking him for anything crazy. Be with the people the way you would like them to be with you. And refrain from that which you would want them to refrain from when it comes to you. The golden rule. Another story here. I don't see the Prophet speaking and spitting fire here with his philosophy and stuff. No. It says, this one you've all heard this one, but there's one point here that I want to make that's interesting, at least for me. It says that the Holy Prophet, he entered the mosque once. He saw two groups of people. We've all heard this story. One group was busy doing ibadah of Allah. Another group was busy in intellectual endeavor. They're engaging with each other intellectually, having this mubahatha, as they say, and so on. And so the Prophet, he says, both of these are on khair. Both groups are doing something good, but I'm going to join the group that is gaining knowledge. We've all heard this story, but this part is important in my opinion. He says this. He says, I have been sent to teach the people. And so I will go with this group. That is my job as a prophet. Sometimes what we do is we take this story, what do we say? What we say is that this shows that ilm is more valuable than ibadah and worship. Brothers and sisters, if you have any other hadith and literature that proves that, that's a different story. But if we're just going to focus on this, the hadith is silent about that, I would say. Because the Prophet is bringing his reasoning for joining that group. He says, my job as a prophet is to be there. But if you have the proper knowledge, then you will go in the direction of ibadah, ubudiyya, servitude of Allah. It seems like that is the end goal based on the Quran. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I only created man and jinn for one purpose, to be my servants. That is the end goal. But how do we get to that end goal is ilm and knowledge. And the Prophet says, me, that's my job. Just to make people aware. Just to get rid of ignorance. To the point where even Imam Hussein, he says in Ziyarat of Arba'in, he did what he did to get rid of the ignorance of the people. The foolishness of the people. Based on what? Based on their ignorance. So, this is my job, he says. Why should I not fall in love with someone who their job is to teach the people? That's his job. He says, my job is to teach the people. But it doesn't take value from the other one. I've noticed that's what people do sometimes. Oh yeah, ibadah's not thinking for 1 hour. There's that famous hadith. Is equal to 7 years of ibadah, or I forget the numbers exactly. That's true. But the reason probably is because that thought you put in that 1 hour will probably yield lots of ibadah in the future that is a valuable ibadah, not superficial ibadah. And it is persistent. It's not an ibadah that is lost all of a sudden because one little problem comes up. Yes? So these are all coming together. These two help each other. Alright, so that's one. Another story. It says that someone entered upon the Prophet once, one of his companions. He says that I saw that I could see signs of upsetness in his face. And so I asked him what has happened. He says, I'm afraid for my ummah, my nation. Oh, what are you afraid of? He says, I fear for them. What do you fear? I fear of shirk for them. And so this companion, obviously what he's going to say is, after all you've done, how can you fear for shirk? In other words, O Prophet, like there's a guarantee your people are not going to go back to worshipping sticks and stones and wood and idols. Okay? That sure is not going to happen, O Prophet. And the Prophet kind of agrees with that. But he says, look, when I say shirk, what I mean by shirk is riya. Riya. And then he recites the verse of 110 of Surah Al-Kahf. He says, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. This person, whoever wants Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ, they have the hope, the raja and hope of meeting their Lord. They know it's going to happen one day. And this person, rocket science? No. this person should do good deeds and make sure that they don't bring anyone else into the picture and the equation other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's all he's asking for. He says, look, you want Jannah, you want all of that? You want to be a billionaire? Like sometimes you have to use the same language of the people. You want to be a billionaire? Just make sure everything you do, you just make sure Allah's the only one in that equation. But it's, yes, for me it's this important that it's going to be considered shirk. Oh people, if you go back to idol worship, then probably Allah's going to just exterminate you. Like, that's not the problem anymore. But you have to grow after I've come to you as the Prophet. And I bring you these teachings, albeit basic ones, but these are the teachings, that you still reach a point where I'm not worried about you idol worshiping. I want you to grow. Now your idol worship is to bring anyone else into the equation. Is that too hard? No, very simple. Make sure Allah is your ultimate goal in everything. It's not too hard. Remember, brothers and sisters, what's the prize? The prize is Jannah. For these simple, basic teachings, I wonder why the people fell in love with the Prophet back then. Number one, he was a living example of his teachings. And number two, the teachings were not too complicated. Another one. It says that Mu'adh bin Jabal, he's a famous companion. He says the Prophet sent me to Yemen to run some things there. He says, Mu'adh, he's going to give him some advice now, that you're in charge of the people there on my behalf. So make sure you have very complicated, sophisticated philosophy classes for the people. Make sure that when you lead them in Salat and you have a connection with Allah in that moment, that you go all out with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? You go all out and you make sure that you have a wholesome Salat for yourself, and that rubs off on the people as well. Did he say things like that? He says, when you go there, and so we're all listening now, what is this advice that the Holy Prophet wants to give Mu'adh? He says, whenever it's winter time, okay, I want you to pray Salat al-Fajr right at Fajr time, in the beginning of the time. Why? Because, and recite the Quran the amount the people can bear. Why? But why should I pray it right at the beginning of Fajr time? Well, that's the default, right, brothers and sisters? Because the night is long in the winters. Look at this. The night is long in the winters. The people have gotten enough rest, probably. They can wake up on time. Wow. And you know what he's going to say about the summers now? He says, and when it's summertime, I want you to pray Fajr when the sky has lit up. It's still Fajr time. But the sun, of course, hasn't risen. But, you know, we have usually 1 to 1.5 hours between Fajr time and sunrise to pray, right? As time goes by, the sky lights up. It's still Fajr time, but the sky has lit up. So that's like an added, maybe the Prophet is adding another hour to the sleep of the people. So that they can make it to this Salat. Why? Because they didn't get enough rest the night before. Because the nights are short now. Very interesting. So you would expect that he tells his representative, I want you to give the people a feeling of that spiritual high that you achieve in your Salat by prolonging your Salat. No, he doesn't do that. He says, look at how the people are, and you try to make sure that they're comfortable. Ibadah is not supposed to be uncomfortable when it's done in a gathering. It reminds me, someone once that they have issues sometimes. They say the Imam of Jamaat has to do all the mustahabbat. Amen. In my books come from back home. Okay, you go and sit and you pray behind some of these ulama. Their pace is pretty, I wouldn't say too fast or anything, but it's you can tell they're not doing all the mustahabbat. Yes, for example, if I go to ruku', I say Subhana Rabbiyal Azimi wa bihamdi. I won't rush through it. I'll say it at a normal pace. The ones who are behind me, for example, if they want to say also a salawat in that moment, that time they can fit that in. Trust me, I say it in a way so they can fit it in. Okay? you won't get the sawab of the mustahabbat, for example, that the imam is doing necessarily. Okay? Yes, the imam should cater to everybody as much as they can, but what they have to keep in mind is the weakest of those who are behind them. This is in our adab, this is in our etiquettes. This is in the etiquettes of salat. Jama'ah salat for the imam is to do, in Farsi they say, ra'ayat hal. Okay? Ra'ayat hal. I don't need to do Urdu, right? That's Urdu, right? You do mura'at and ra'ayat of the hal of the people. See what state they're in. Sometimes, yes, the occasion will call for such. Sometimes it won't. Yes? That's what you like about Islam. It's so dynamic. Not black and white. These are the teachings of the Prophet. He's sending his rep. This is what he's telling him. And finally, one more story. It says that one night, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, very famous, he says, we took food for the Holy Prophet. So when you're taking food for somebody, you're not going to take it bland, right? You're going to flavor it up and spice it up. You guys know what I'm talking about. All right, so you're going to do that. Now, you have choices. If you're more Mediterranean, I would say, / Iranian, you'll put garlic in there, you'll put onion and stuff in there. If you're more subcontinent, it'll go masala, that kind of thing. You masala it up, right? And you'll put probably onions and garlic. Okay? All right. So they take fruit for the most beloved of God's creation. They're going to make sure it's tasty. So they take it to the Prophet. So it was made with onion and garlic and all that good stuff. And so the Prophet, though, it says that this person later comes to the Prophet. He says, oh my God, you didn't eat any. We don't see the marks of your fingers in this food. Back then there was no spoons and forks. They would eat with their hands. We don't see that you've touched this food. And he gets very upset. And of course, you know what the answer of the Prophet is going to be. The Prophet, he says, was there something wrong with the food? The Prophet, he says, no. The food had garlic in it. I'm a person who meets with people, and I can't eat something, no matter how tasty it is, that is going to turn the people away from me. It's happened before to myself, brothers and sisters. True story. People say salam and everything. One brother came and said, Salam alaikum. I was about to say, Khuda fiz dunya, hello barzakh. Knock out, okay? Some powerful garlic. Yes. These are my teachings, the Prophet says. He doesn't say, if you are feeling super special, but you had a food that leaves a very foul smell in your mouth. If you're feeling super special, who cares what the people think? If you haven't been able to, I don't know, let's just say shower for a few days, and getting close to anyone will knock them out. Who cares spirituality? Who cares about dunya? But then you look at the stories of our imams. Yes, the most well-dressed, the best smelling. The Holy Prophet ﷺ, whenever he's leaving his home, he's looking in the mirror, making sure he's looking good. And they ask him why. He says, you look good when you go to your brothers and sisters. Huh? These are the teachings of our Holy Prophet ﷺ. So if I expect Shaykh to come and speak about something very sophisticated on the wiladat of the Holy Prophet, no, the sophistication of the Prophet was his simplicity, let's say. Yes? The simplicity of the Prophet, but acting upon that and his simple teachings are what make him so special and sophisticated, if you want to use that word. If that word is so important and so special to us, then we'll use it in that way. In other words, brothers and sisters, the malakut will have its effect in alam al-mulk, if we really want to get sophisticated, when a person from alam al-mulk has fixed themselves through these simple teachings to the point where they're a manifestation of malakut. Yes. These might be simple teachings, but wonders are happening on the other side. Why would anyone turn such a thing down? Simple teachings, great rewards. Sounds like a credit card gig. Right? Simple teachings, yet the greatest rewards, the most persistent rewards in the akhirah, the never-ending rewards of the akhirah. This is our Prophet. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to learn those simple teachings and act upon them in our lives. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Allahu samad lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين أثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا لا إله إلا هو له الأسماء الحسنى والمثل الأعلى تبارك وتعالى ثم أصلي وأسلم على نجيبه وحبيبه وحافظ سره الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرضين بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل وسلم على علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة اللهم صل وسلم على أئمة الهدى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف القائم المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Once again, I invite all of us to remember and to uphold the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout our lives and to try our best to be His obedient servants. That's what it's all about. That's the only thing, an active ingredient that will get us anywhere in the akhirah, inshaAllah. Continuing with this theme of the Holy Prophet on this very, very auspicious day of Jumaa and the Holy Prophet's wiladat, I want to share with you just a couple lines from Nahj al-Balagha, which I think will be the key to a lot of the problems that we have. Once again, these are simple things, okay, just reminders. But when I say key to lots of the problems we have today, I'm speaking ideologically and of course practically as well in our practical lives. But even ideologically, because in this day and age, people are just very confused about certain things that in the past were very clear. Okay, I'm not going to give examples, but you probably will be able to guess what we're talking about. Different things, very simple. That no one's had these issues for the past thousands and however many years after Prophet Adam, mankind has been living on this earth. Then all of a sudden, you would think as humanity grows intellectually and is discovering more and more, that the humanity would grow with it. But no, the humanity, even the most basic things are now questioned and doubted in. And sometimes you feel that it's not because there's an intellectual void, there's a problem, we can't figure things out with our minds. It's not about that. Lots of times, the problem is something else that I will point to after I go through these lines. It says here, Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, when he's speaking about the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيْهِ الدُّنْيَا عُرِضَتْ عَلَيْهِ الدُّنْيَا فَأَبَى أَن يَقْبَلَهَا. It says that this Holy Prophet, the dunya was offered to him. Okay? The dunya was offered to him. Now someone will ask, what does dunya exactly mean? Okay? Dunya, the negative one, the one with negative connotations, is the one that will take away from the akhirah. Or else, dunya gets you to akhirah, brothers and sisters. Yes, it might sound like an oxymoron, but it's not. Dunya gets to akhirah, but when dunya takes from akhirah, that's a problem. That's the dunya madhmuma, okay, that Amir al-Mu'minin is always bashing. Alright? Or else dunya itself, there's nothing wrong with it, in and of itself. When it takes from your akhirah, instead of getting you to the akhirah, that's when we have a problem. That's when Amir al-Mu'minin has a problem. So he says, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيْهِ الدُّنْيَا. The dunya in its entirety was offered to the Holy Prophet with all of its good and bad. The dunya that will take away from akhirah. So what did the Prophet do? And of course, he's being metaphorical here. That it was offered to him. You can't hand the earth over to somebody. فَأَبَى أَن يَقْبَلَهَا. No, he refused to accept it. وَعَلِمَ. This is the reason why he doesn't accept it. عَلِمَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ سُبْحَانَهُ أَبْغَضَ شَيْئًا فَأَبْغَضَهُ. Once again, simple stuff here, brothers and sisters. Simple stuff, okay? He understood, the Prophet understood. أَبْغَضَ اللَّهُ شَيْئًا فَأَبْغَضَهُ. He understood that, okay, there's something out there that Allah is not too fond of. Allah doesn't like. Because usually it's used to destroy one's akhirah, okay? So he also disliked it. Very simple. If Allah dislikes something, I'll also dislike it. Is that too complicated? It's not too complicated. He knew that Allah, the glorified, hated something, so he hated it too. حَقَّرَ شَيْئًا فَحَقَّرَهُ. That Allah held something low, so He also held it low. If the standard is Allah, this is what happens. If the standard is akhirah, this is what happens. I'm saying this for a reason I want to talk about after we're done with these couple lines. If the standard is Allah, if the standard is my akhirah, if the standard for me everything that matters is akhirah, automatically what's going to happen? Anything other than that is not going to be as important anymore. Haqqara, haqarat, tahqir, small, lowliness. Lowliness, not small, lowliness. Sometimes something is big versus something else that's also big, okay, or is bigger than it. We say this one is lower than that one, okay, smaller than that one. So it says وَصَغَّرَ شَيْئًا فَصَغَّرَهُ. It was low. Sometimes two things are the same, let's say, size. One is less valuable, one is more valuable. Okay, I see this one as lower as this one, although they're the same size and volume. Sometimes one is bigger, one is smaller. This saghir, that the word that's used here, the Imam is using saghir. He used lowly before this. Now he says even smaller. So look, the dunya, even if it was equal to the akhirah in its size, let's say, whatever that means, would have less value, was lower. But not only that, it's not the same size even. One is saghir, one is smaller even. Sagharahu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saghara dunya. Allah sees it as saghir, so the Prophet saw it as saghir. Think about it, only 60 years, 30 or 40 of which, not 60, inshallah more than that. 80, 100, 150 years. Yeah, I always say this. I don't know about you guys, I'm going to be around for 200 years or so. Alright, depending on my health. If I'm too unhealthy when I'm like 178, I'm okay leaving at 178. Okay. 100 years, 50 of which you're probably not doing well financially or health-wise. When you're young, you're broke. You're older, you're not broke, but you are going to break. You know what I'm saying? So, you got 50 years in the middle to maybe enjoy your life. 50 years compared to, let's say, 500 years. Let's say 1,000 years. Let's say 1,000,000 years. Let's say infinity. Come on. So it's small as well. And there's people who are 70-year-old children who still think the next 10 years of their life they're probably going to be alive, or 20 years of their life equals the whole akhirah. This is so worrying. Anyway, this is what happens when you distance slowly from the teachings of Islam and the prophets. The Prophet here, it says, حَقَّرَ شَيْئًا فَحَقَّرَهُ صَغَّرَ شَيْئًا فَصَغَّرَهُ وَلَوْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِينَا. And the hadith goes on. I don't need to read that part. Okay, brothers and sisters, it seems one of the problems that is causing us, and this is itself is like a lecture series, maybe someone can do sometime, but I'm just going to touch on it a little bit and scratch the surface. It seems the problems that we have with all the liberalism today, the isms and the secularism and the humanism, and is just because that this dunya is being offered to us, and we're not saying we're not too interested. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. And I'm saying this about the Muslims, brothers and sisters. I'm not talking about atheists or secularists. I'm talking about the Islam that is now, they're trying to mix it with certain other ideologies. What you find is that this individual, who is a good individual, is kind of confused because the akhirah for them practically is not everything anymore. The life of this dunya also carries weight. No one says it shouldn't. All right, this is the part that I need you to really pay attention to, because we need to pull apart these layers. No one says don't care about dunya. But the standard is the akhirah. And so, if Islamic culture sometimes is telling me that if you do this in life, if you make this sacrifice, if you bite the bullet here, if you compromise on this a little bit, if you give up this freedom of yours, Jannah will be yours. What you will find that is our Muslim brothers and sisters, this is not something that they will be interested in anymore. Why? Because the only color this equation has for them is the color of akhirah. Now if you ask that person, is akhirah everything to you? They say yes. But practically speaking, even if this way of life, this lifestyle for me, that we have enough literature for is what is getting me Jannah all the way. It's not going to be enough for me. I have to find a middle ground. Brothers and sisters, a person who has truly understood what akhirah is all about and dunya is all about, if they find a way to secure akhirah, but certain compromises have to be made, they will make those compromises. But in this day and age, and I don't blame the secularists, if I was secular, this is the exact way to live actually. That I make sure I live a wholesome life in this dunya exactly the way I should. Because look, either there is no life after this life, or even if there is, practically for me, I'm not even focused on that. As if that is already secured. Makes sense if you don't believe in that. But as a Muslim, with access to 600 plus pages of Quran, and access to thousands of hadiths by our Prophet and Imams, this is just not going to fly. And this is where we have a mess. Of our younger ones, for example, being exposed to all these isms now, and they're trying to navigate all of this through Islamic culture and what the literature says. You will find someone who will say something. You're like, Habibi, Janu, as Asad said last night, or Jani, whatever it is. Huh? If you don't believe in akhirah at all, that's one thing. But what if the literature is telling you that this is the way to go for Jannah itself? Yes, someone will say, well, if we tell people this, then others will abuse this. Others will take advantage of this. And that is true. Mankind will always take advantage of anything they can. But if that person is looking at it like this, that this is going to secure my Jannah, instead of me, for example, destroying the family, let's say, destroying my relationship with my parents, etc., etc., etc. If this person looks at the entire picture, what are you going to do about the literature that is saying something opposite to what you're saying? I don't get it, brothers and sisters. I just don't get it. There's certain things out there right now people are talking about. It's just so cool to talk about on social media. But all you need to do is say, Habibi, just open up the Quran. Just open up the hadiths. See what are you going to do with this literature? What are you going to do with what Imam Ali said here and did there versus what you're saying that should be happening here, there, this country, this ism, this ideology? So when you look at it, you're like, okay, the dunya has made its way in. Me living a wholesome life in this life, no matter what, because dunya also has an importance. This is the problem, brothers and sisters. It says, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيْهِ الدُّنْيَا فَأَبَى. He said, no, I'm not interested. In other words, I'm going to make sure first I secure akhirah, then as much dunya as I want I can have. But I'm not going to let dunya and wholesome life define my akhirah for me, determine what my akhirah looks like. As I said, this is a complicated topic. It has to do both with our ideologies. How much is dunya actually swaying us in our ideologies? How much importance we give to dunya? And also even in our practical lives. That itself is its own story. But brothers and sisters, even if we don't figure this whole thing out, what we can understand is, from this, what Imam Ali says here, when he's introducing the Prophet, that hadith is echoed, that رَأْسُ كُلِّ خَطِيئَةٍ حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا, that love of this dunya is the reason for all of the problems that we have. And so, keeping that in mind, inshallah we can adjust our approach to different things. As I said, I'm sorry if I was a bit vague in all of this. Those of you who know what I might be referring to and different things that I'm referring to, alhamdulillah. If not, we have to understand that the problem is that we bring the dunya too much into the equation in our decisions in life and the ideologies that we have. We seek refuge in Allah from that. And that is the lesson we learn from our Holy Prophet as well. That he was given the dunya, he said, I'm not interested. Allah looks at it like this, that's why I'm going to look at it like this. If I need to make compromises, I will make compromises. What matters to me, I want to make sure 100% akhirah. And then I will put in as much dunya as I want. I will have a wholesome life as much as I want. But I'm going to make sure the akhirah is secured first. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal-Asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat. Wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bil-sabr. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salawat. No, it's okay, closed. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله صلوات الله عليه. أشهد أن عليا وأبناءه المعصومين حجج الله صلوات الله عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما. قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم بحق فاطمة وأبيها وبالها وبنيها وسر المستودع فيها. Inshallah, recite Ayat Karima 5 times for all those who are ill and ailing throughout the world. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 صلوا على محمد وآله.
Mu'minin, just a quick reminder about tonight's program and the weekend's programs, inshallah. Tonight we do have an interactive family night with our guest speaker, Sayyid Asad Jafri, here at CFK. The program is scheduled to begin with Salaat al-Maghribain at 7:11 p.m. It's quite a coincidence. 7:30 p.m., inshallah, we will begin the program with the recitation of the Holy Quran and some festive poetry, inshallah. And then 7:45 p.m., we will have a group family activity with Sayyid Asad Jafri. He will be leading this activity. It's a surprise and inshallah will be enjoyable to everybody. We will also have a puppet show and a Kahoot game after the family activities end with Sayyid Asad Jafri. And then the program will end with a community Q&A, again, with Sayyid Asad Jafri, and we will have tabarak to go, inshallah. A quick reminder about tomorrow's program, tomorrow's workshop with Sayyid Asad Jafri. The workshop registration closes at 6 p.m. today. So if anybody who is interested and would like to register and hasn't gotten the chance to do so, please make sure that you register by 6 p.m. today because we have to close registrations tonight. Also, just a reminder, if you can't make it personally or physically to the courses themselves, there will be an online link emailed out to you, and that link will be valid for a limited time only. We do have another youth event tomorrow night with Sayyid Asad Jafri, and this will be it for this weekend's program. Inshallah, for details, please check out our WhatsApp group texts and our emails, or visit cfkdfw.org, inshallah. In the end, I would like to request everybody to please recite a Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of today's Niyaz sponsors. Marhum Mukhtar Ali Makhraj, Marhuma Rubab Banu bint Haji Naji, Marhum Shabab Ali Ghulam Hussain, the marhumin of Brother Sadiq Makhraj and family, And let us all include our marhumin and the marhumin of the Ummah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليهم حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كذلك الله ربي الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.